My name is Stella Parker, and my family never really saw me. Not when I was a little girl, not when I graduated top of my class, and certainly not now, at 33. I grew up in a house where my brother, Ethan, was the sun, and the rest of us were merely planets orbiting his brilliance. At least, that's how my parents always saw it. Ethan was the golden boy, athletic, charming, and destined for greatness, as my father liked to say. Me? I was nice, quiet, the daughter who was supposed to be polite, presentable, and never take up too much space. 3 weeks ago, I found out Ethan was about to sell the only place that ever felt like home, my grandmother's house. He thought I wouldn't stop him. He was wrong. If you've ever been underestimated, you'll want to hear how this played out. Stick around, and when you're done, let me know if you've ever fought to be seen. Drop a comment, like, or share this. Maybe someone else needs to hear it too. Sunday dinners have been a Parker family tradition since before I was born. No matter where we were in life, we were expected to gather around that heavy oak table in my parents' dining room, eat roast chicken, and pretend we were a perfectly harmonious family. That night was no different, at least at first. I sat at the far end of the table, next to my mother, while Ethan sat at the head, beside my father, like some heir apparent to a throne that didn't really exist. He was telling one of his endless stories about business deals and golf games, his voice carrying easily over the clinking of silverware. Dad laughed at every punchline. Mom smiled nervously and refilled Ethan's wine glass without being asked. I stayed quiet, pushing a piece of roasted carrot around my plate, knowing that if I interrupted, no one would hear me anyway. "Big week coming up," Ethan said casually, slicing into his steak with a smug little grin. His tone caught my attention. "Oh?" Dad asked, leaning forward like a king awaiting news from his most trusted general. Ethan smirked, taking his time before answering. "Let's just say some exciting changes are on the horizon. Moves that will really secure our family's future." The way he said "our family's future" made my stomach tighten. I glanced up, ready to ask what he meant, but Dad jumped in first, clapping Ethan on the back. "That's my boy, always thinking ahead. Always, Ethan, always ahead." I swallowed my question and kept quiet, but a whisper of unease began to creep up my spine. As the conversation swirled around me, I drifted into memory. I remembered being 12 years old, standing on that very porch, clutching a blue ribbon I'd won at the county science fair. Grandma Eleanor had hugged me so tightly I couldn't breathe, whispering, "You're going to change the world, Stella." That same evening, Dad barely glanced at my ribbon before turning to Ethan, who had just come back from a baseball game. "2 home runs today," Dad had boomed proudly. "This kid's going places." That was the pattern. Ethan achieved, Ethan was praised. I achieved, and it barely registered. Grandma was the only one who ever truly saw me. And now her house, our house, was all I had left of her. After dinner, everyone dispersed. My parents went to the kitchen to argue about dessert, and Ethan wandered off, phone pressed to his ear. I rose quietly, meaning to grab my coat when I caught a snippet of his conversation. "Yes, the property's ready. Meeting set for Tuesday. We'll sign then." My blood went cold. Property? Meeting? Sign? I edged closer to the hallway, heart pounding. "No, she doesn't know," Ethan said, his voice low but sharp. "Why would she? She's never cared about this stuff before." He paused, listening, then chuckled. "Yeah, by the time anyone finds out, it'll be a done deal. Don't worry." I froze. There was only one property Ethan could be talking about. Grandma's house. The realization hit me like a punch to the chest. He wasn't just making vague big plans. He was selling it. Selling the one place that had ever felt like home to me. And clearly, he didn't care who got hurt in the process. I stepped back into the shadows before he could see me, forcing my breathing to stay quiet. That was the moment I realized Ethan wasn't going to stop himself. No one else would stop him. It had to be me. And this time, I wouldn't be invisible. I drove back to the city with my fingers gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. The glow of the passing streetlights flickered across the windshield like a warning signal, each flash whispering the same thing over and over. He's really going to do it. Ethan's going to sell Grandma's house. By the time I reached my building, my mind was a tangled knot of anger and determination. From the outside, my apartment looked like any other trendy city loft. High ceilings, exposed brick, floor-to-ceiling windows with a skyline view. Nothing about it screamed wealth or power. And that was the point. The moment I stepped inside, my phone buzzed on the counter. I swiped it open to see 12 unread messages and 5 missed calls, all from the same contact, Aurora Estates HQ. I exhaled slowly, my pulse settling. This was my real life. "Call the office," I muttered to myself, tossing my coat aside. The line clicked, and a cheerful voice greeted me. "Stella, perfect timing. We're ready to move on the Riverside project, boss. Just waiting on your final go-ahead." Boss? I couldn't help but smile at the word. None of them had any idea that the quiet, overlooked daughter from a small-town family dinner table was the mastermind behind Aurora Estates, one of the fastest-growing real estate firms in the region. To the Parkers, I was just Stella, the dependable daughter who never caused trouble. To the city, I was a power player with millions in assets and a reputation for transforming neglected properties into thriving communities. "Send me the full proposal," I said smoothly. "I'll review it tonight." As soon as the call ended, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at my sleek glass desk. My laptop glowed to life, displaying spreadsheets, legal documents, and maps of properties scattered across the city. But tonight, I wasn't thinking about Riverside or Aurora Estates' next acquisition. Tonight, I was thinking about Ethan. I started digging immediately. It didn't take long to track down the name of the developer he was working with, Grandview Holdings. The name sounded legitimate, respectable even. But when I pulled their records, my stomach twisted. Grandview wasn't a family-run company like Ethan's construction business. They were predators, buying up historic properties, flattening them, and throwing up soulless luxury condos. And worse, they were infamous for cutting corners, unsafe structures, lawsuits buried under non-disclosure agreements, exactly the kind of people who would gut my grandmother's beloved home without a second thought. As I scrolled through the data, I found something even more disturbing, a copy of the preliminary sales agreement. The closing date was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks. That's how much time I had before Ethan signed away the last piece of my childhood. I pushed back from the desk, my heart pounding. "Not happening," I whispered to the empty room. "Not on my watch." The next morning, I decided to play it cool. I drove back to the suburbs under the pretense of checking in and stopped by Ethan's office. He looked surprised to see me, and not in a pleasant way. "Stella," he said, leaning back in his chair, "didn't expect to see you here. Everything okay?" "Fine," I said lightly, though my pulse was racing. "I was just thinking about the house. You mentioned some changes the other night at dinner. What did you mean?" Ethan's eyes narrowed for a split second before his easy grin slid back into place. "Oh, that." He waved a hand dismissively. "Just business stuff. Nothing you need to worry about." "Humor me," I pressed, keeping my tone casual. "It's Grandma's house. I'd like to know what's happening with it." His jaw tightened. "Stella," he said slowly, "you've never cared about the family business, or the house, or any of this. Suddenly you're curious? Why?" I forced a small laugh. "Because it's my family, too." He leaned forward, elbows on his desk. His voice dropped. "Stay out of things you don't understand." The words were sharp, like a blade sliding between my ribs. I held his gaze, refusing to flinch. "Maybe you should explain it to me then." Ethan smirked, the kind of smirk that used to make me feel small when we were kids. "You've never cared about this family before, Stella," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Don't start now." I walked out before he could see my expression crack. My hands were trembling, but not from fear, from fury. For years, I'd let Ethan underestimate me, let him believe I was harmless, invisible. That ended now. I glanced at my reflection in the glass door on my way out, a vow hardening in my chest. He thought this was his game, but he had no idea who he was really playing against. And by the time he figured it out, it would be far too late. I sat in my car for a full 10 minutes outside my parents' house, staring at the front door like it was the gateway to a battlefield.
The last time I'd confronted them about anything serious, I was 17 and begging them not to cancel my college visit so they could attend Ethan's basketball tournament. They canceled the trip. Ethan scored 2 points. Some things never changed. But this time was different. This wasn't about a missed opportunity or a bruised ego. This was about Grandma's house, the only place where I'd ever felt seen, loved, and safe. I drew a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and went inside.
Mom was in the kitchen, humming softly as she stirred a pot of soup. "Stella, what a surprise," she said warmly, wiping her hands on a towel. "We weren't expecting you today." "Hi, Mom." I tried to smile, but it felt brittle. "Is Dad around? I need to talk to you both. It's important." Her humming stopped, and a tiny crease appeared between her eyebrows. "Richard's in the den. What's wrong?" "Let me just get him," I said, brushing past before my nerves betrayed me. They sat across from me in the den, my father leaning back in his favorite armchair like a king on his throne. "All right," Dad said, clasping his hands over his stomach. "What's so urgent?" I looked from him to Mom, my throat tightening. "It's about Grandma's house," I said carefully. "I know Ethan's planning to sell it, and I think it's a mistake, a huge one." Dad's brows lifted. "Sell it? Where did you hear that?" "From Ethan himself," I said. "Well, not directly, but he's been talking to developers. I've done some research, and the company he's dealing with, Grandview Holdings, they're notorious for bulldozing historic properties. Once the house is gone, it's gone forever." Mom wrung her hands nervously. "Oh, Stella, I'm sure Ethan knows what he's doing. Maybe he just wants to modernize the property." I shook my head sharply. "No, Mom, he doesn't care about modernizing. He cares about a payday." Dad's expression hardened, his jaw tightening. "Stella, your brother has worked hard for this family. If he believes selling the house is the right move, then I trust his judgment." My chest squeezed painfully. "And what about my judgment? Does that matter at all?" He didn't even blink. "You don't run the family business, Stella. Ethan does." I could feel the old familiar ache rising, the same one I'd felt every time Dad congratulated Ethan for a C- report card while barely acknowledging my straight A's. I fought to keep my voice steady. Grandma loved that house. She trusted us to take care of it. Selling it would be— "Enough," Dad snapped, cutting me off. "This is Ethan's decision. It's his right." The words sliced through me like ice water. "Richard," Mom said softly, trying to smooth things over, "maybe we should hear Stella out." "No," Dad interrupted. "Ethan has been carrying this family for years. If Stella wanted to be involved, she should have been here instead of running off to the city." My lips trembled. Running off to the city? If only they knew what I'd built there, what I was. But they didn't, because I'd never told them. And now Ethan was using my silence against me. The argument spiraled from there, voices rising until my mother was near tears. Finally, Ethan himself appeared in the doorway, all faux concern and perfect timing. "What's going on here?" he asked smoothly, like a hero arriving to calm the storm. "She's accusing you of trying to destroy Grandma's house," Dad said bitterly. Ethan's eyes widened in mock hurt. "Stella, why would you say something like that? I'm just trying to do what's best for everyone." "Best for you," I shot back. He looked wounded, then turned to our parents. "See, she's always twisting things. She doesn't understand how hard I've been working." Dad's face softened instantly. "We know, son." And just like that, they were all on his side. I left before they could see me break. By the time I reached my apartment, I was trembling with rage and heartbreak. Maya was waiting for me, perched on my couch with her laptop open and a bottle of wine already uncorked. "They didn't listen, did they?" she asked quietly. I sank down beside her, burying my face in my hands. "It's worse than that. They think I'm the enemy." Maya handed me a glass. "Then stop playing defense. You've been hiding who you are for too long. It's time they knew what you're capable of." I lifted my head, my tears drying into something sharper. "No," I said, "not yet." She blinked. "Stella?" "I'll fight him," I said, my voice like steel. But I'm going to do it my way. In the reflection of my wine glass, I saw not the forgotten daughter my family thought they knew, but the woman who had built an empire in secret, and I swore Ethan wouldn't see me coming until it was too late. Game on. By Monday morning, my anger had cooled into something far more dangerous: focus. I wasn't going to waste another second begging Ethan or my parents to see reason. If they wouldn't listen, I'd fight in silence and strike where Ethan least expected it. To do that, I needed answers, real ones. I dialed Caleb, my trusted business partner at Aurora Estates. If there was anyone who could dig through a mountain of shady transactions, it was him. He picked up on the second ring. "Morning, boss. You sound murderous. What's going on?" I laughed humorously. "Murderous is about right. I need you to dig into a private matter, quietly."
Private like competitor private or private like family drama private? I hesitated. Both. I'll send you Ethan's company information. I need to know everything. Contracts, debts, investors, the works. Caleb whistled low. "You got it. I'll get my team on it immediately. Anything I should be looking for specifically?" "Look for trouble," I said. "If it's there, Ethan's involved." While Caleb worked, Maya and I began sketching out strategies at my apartment. She sat cross-legged on the couch with her laptop, while I paced like a caged lion. "The first step is stopping the sale legally," Maya said. "If you have any claim to the property, we can file an injunction." "I don't," I admitted, frustration gnawing at me. "The house is in Dad's name, and he's practically gift-wrapping it for Ethan." "Then we fight on the financial side," Maya suggested. "Buy the development company out from under them." I froze mid-step. The idea was bold and perfect. Grandview Holdings wasn't massive. If I played it right, Aurora Estates could acquire a controlling stake before Ethan even realized what was happening. A slow smile spread across my face. Let's just say I'm very good at quiet acquisitions. 2 days later, Caleb called back. The moment I heard his tone, my stomach dropped. "Stella, you might want to sit down for this." "I'm standing," I said. "Talk." "Your brother's in deep," Caleb said, his voice grim. "And I don't just mean a little bad luck. Ethan owes more money than his company is worth." My pulse spiked. How? To who? Casinos, private lenders, people who don't exactly have offices with receptionists, he said pointedly. The kind of guys who break kneecaps when payments are late. I swallowed hard. That explains why he's so desperate to sell Grandma's house. Caleb sighed. It gets worse. He's been embezzling from the family business for over a year to keep the debt collectors at bay. For a second, the room tilted. Ethan hadn't just been reckless. He'd been stealing from the very family he claimed to be protecting. "Caleb," I said tightly, "send me everything you found. Every document, every wire transfer, every single lie he's told." "Already on its way," he replied. "And Stella, be careful. Guys like Ethan don't go down quietly." That night, Maya and I spread the documents across my dining table like pieces of a puzzle. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a bank statement. "He wired $50,000 to Grandview under a shell company. This isn't just a sale, Stella. It's a cover-up." I clenched my fists. He's not just selling the house. He's selling our family to save himself. "We can stop him," Maya said firmly. "We buy Grandview before the deal closes. Once you own the company, you control the fate of the house. And Ethan never has to know it's me," I added, a fierce thrill running through me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had the upper hand. But then my phone rang. The caller ID read, Ethan. My stomach knotted. I almost didn't answer. Almost. "Hello?" My voice was steady, but my pulse was racing. His tone was calm, too calm. "You don't know who you're messing with, Stella." A chill crept up my spine. "Ethan, what are you talking about? You think you can play games behind my back?" His voice sharpened, full of barely contained fury. "Stay out of my way, or you'll regret it." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at my reflection in the darkened window, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. This wasn't just about Grandma's house anymore. This was a war, and I had just declared it. The morning after Ethan's threatening call, I woke up with a single, unwavering thought. End this before he destroys everything. Maya and I moved fast. Within 48 hours, Aurora Estates quietly began acquiring properties surrounding Grandma's house. To anyone watching, it looked like a routine urban revitalization project. A few small homes bought here, a neglected storefront there. But in reality, it was the opening move in a much larger game. Every piece we take gives us leverage, Maya said, as she slid another deed across my desk. The closer we get to Ethan's target, the harder it'll be for him to make his deal. I nodded, a rush of satisfaction warming me. Good. Keep it quiet. If Ethan finds out it's me, this whole thing blows up. Oh, don't worry, she smirked. Your name isn't on a single document. As far as anyone knows, Aurora Estates is just another faceless operation. Perfect. By the end of the week, the change was noticeable. Ethan showed up at Grandma's house one afternoon, and I watched from my car down the street as he paced the lawn, phone pressed to his ear, his movements jerky and frantic. He had no idea why every door he knocked on was suddenly closed to him, why every offer he made was immediately outbid.
He only knew that something, or someone, was standing in his way, and it was driving him crazy. 2 nights later, Caleb called me with an update. "Ethan's starting to dig," he said. He hired a private investigator to figure out who's blocking him. My stomach tightened. How close are they? Not very, yet, Caleb assured me. But if you slip up, they'll get closer fast. I exhaled slowly, steadying my nerves. Then we make sure they don't find anything to slip on. Maya leaned over the table, tapping her laptop. Every paper trail leads back to shell companies. Ethan can suspect all he wants. He'll never prove it. Still, the idea of Ethan sniffing around made my skin crawl. He was dangerous when he felt cornered, and right now, he was definitely cornered. The breaking point came at Sunday dinner. The air was thick with tension before anyone even sat down. Mom fussed with the dishes, Dad read the paper like it was armor, and Ethan looked like a storm about to break. Halfway through the meal, he slammed his fork down with a clang that made Mom jump. "Enough," he roared. "I'm sick of pretending everything's fine." My heart thudded, but I forced my expression to stay calm. "What's wrong, Ethan?" He glared at me, eyes blazing. "Don't play innocent. Someone's sabotaging me, outbidding my offers, blocking my plans. And you," he jabbed a finger at me, "you've been awfully interested lately." I raised my eyebrows, feigning surprise. "Me? Ethan, I barely understand your business." Dad frowned, confused. "Son, what are you talking about?" Ethan's fists clenched. "I'm talking about someone deliberately trying to ruin me, and she's the only one with a motive." I tilted my head, voice soft and calm. "Why would I ruin you, Ethan? You're my brother." He froze, caught between rage and uncertainty, while Dad's voice thundered across the table. "Enough of this nonsense. Unless you have proof, don't accuse your sister." Ethan's face twisted, but he said nothing more, his jaw clamped tight. He left in a huff, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. Later that night, as I sat with Maya in my apartment, her phone buzzed. She scanned the message, then grinned like a cat with cream. "Well," she said, turning the screen toward me, "the developer signed the transfer papers this morning." My breath caught. "You mean, you officially own Grandview Holdings?" Maya confirmed, her voice full of triumph. "Congratulations, Stella. You control Ethan's deal now." I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. Ethan thought he was playing chess, but I'd just taken his king without him ever seeing my move. The day of the signing dawned cold and gray, like even the sky was holding its breath. I stood by my apartment window, staring at the city skyline, as my reflection stared back at me. No longer the overlooked daughter, but a woman about to reveal the truth she'd kept hidden for years. "Are you ready for this?" Maya asked softly from behind me. I turned, smoothing my black blazer, my armor for the battlefield ahead. "As ready as I'll ever be." By tonight, Ethan won't have a single card left to play. Maya handed me a leather folder filled with documents. Every deed, every transfer, every piece of evidence. Once you open this, there's no going back. I gave a small, fierce smile. Good. I don't want to go back. The signing was being held at a private conference room in a swanky downtown law office. When I arrived, I paused just outside the glass doors, taking a steadying breath before stepping inside. Ethan sat at the head of the table, leaning back in his chair like a conquering hero. Our parents flanked him, Dad looking proud and resolute, Mom nervous and fidgeting with her scarf. Grandview's lawyer sat across from them, a slick man with an even slicker smile. My lawyer, though they didn't know it yet. Ethan's eyes narrowed when he saw me. Well, look who decided to show up. Here to watch me save the family business, Stella? I smiled pleasantly and walked to an empty chair. Something like that. Dad frowned. Stella, this isn't really necessary. Oh, I think it is, I said smoothly, taking my seat. After all, this sale affects the whole family, doesn't it? Ethan scoffed. Not really. I've handled everything. All you have to do is sit there and stay quiet. The urge to laugh was almost overwhelming. Stay quiet? Not anymore. The lawyer slid the papers across the table. Mr. Parker, if you'll just sign here, the property will officially transfer to Grandview Holdings. Ethan picked up the pen, grinning like he'd already won. Wait, I said calmly, my voice cutting through the room like a blade. All eyes turned to me. Ethan's grin faltered. What now, Stella? You gonna beg me one last time? No. I folded my hands neatly on the table. I'm here to tell you there will be no sale. Dad scowled. Stella? Let her speak, Mom said softly, sensing the tremor beneath my words. I met Ethan's gaze head-on. Grandview Holdings isn't yours to sell to anymore, because as of this morning, I own it. Silence. Pure, stunned silence. Then Ethan barked out a laugh. What? That's ridiculous. You don't have that kind of power. I slid the folder across the table. You sure about that? The lawyer flipped it open and paled. It's true, he stammered. Aurora Estates acquired Grandview in full. As of 9 a.m., the company belongs to Miss Stella Parker. Dad's jaw dropped. Aurora Estates? That's you? I turned to him slowly. Yes, Dad. The company you've probably read about in the papers, the one transforming half the city, I built it. From scratch. While you were too busy praising Ethan for his latest accomplishments. Mom covered her mouth with both hands, tears welling in her eyes. Oh, Stella. Ethan went sheet white, then flushed crimson. You're lying, he spat, shoving back his chair. You've been plotting against me this whole time? No, Ethan, I said coldly. I've been protecting the family, something you should have been doing. I opened the second half of the folder, revealing bank statements and wire transfers. Because you weren't selling Grandma's house to save us, you were selling it to cover this. Dad leaned forward, his face ashen. These are gambling debts? Not just gambling, I said, my voice like ice. Private lenders, loan sharks. And to make matters worse, I tapped a highlighted section. You've been embezzling from the family business for over a year. Mom gasped. Ethan, tell me this isn't true. Ethan's hands shook. I did it for us, for the company. I was going to pay it back. Don't you dare, I snapped, my composure cracking. You stole from your own family, then tried to sell the last piece of Grandma we had left. You would have buried us all in your mess. Dad rose to his feet, fury etched into every line of his face. Ethan Parker, is this true? Ethan didn't answer. His silence was answer enough. God help you, Dad muttered, sinking back into his chair. Ethan turned his rage on me, his voice shaking. You think you've won? You think you're so much better than me, hiding behind your fancy company? I stood slowly, meeting him eye to eye. No, Ethan, I didn't hide. I built. While you gambled away everything we had, I built something that lasts. With a guttural roar, Ethan lunged across the table. Mom screamed.
The lawyer scrambled backward. Dad tried to restrain him, but Ethan shoved him aside, eyes wild and unfocused. "You ruined me," he screamed, spittle flying. "You think you can just take everything? You'll regret this, Stella." I didn't move. I just stood there, calm and immovable, like the storm couldn't touch me anymore. "No, Ethan," I said, my voice steady and sharp. "The only thing I regret is that you made me do this." He froze for a split second, chest heaving, then spun and stormed out, the conference room door slamming behind him so hard the glass rattled. Mom collapsed into a chair, sobbing quietly. Dad stared at me, 1,000 unspoken words in his eyes, and I just stood there, breathing hard, knowing that for the first time in my life, they finally saw me, really saw me. But this battle wasn't over yet. Ethan wasn't done, and neither was I. The room was still vibrating from the force of Ethan's exit. Mom sat trembling in a chair, dabbing at her tears with a crumpled napkin. Dad stood at the window, his back to us, shoulders hunched like a man suddenly aged 20 years. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence was deafening. Finally, Dad turned around, his face pale and drawn. "So, all this time?" His voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again. "All this time, you were building Aurora Estates without me?" I met his gaze, my heart twisting. "Yes," he swallowed hard. "You should have told me. I could have." "You could have what, Dad?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. Praised Ethan louder, reminded me again that I wasn't the one worth investing in. His mouth opened, then closed. He had no defense. For the first time, he looked small to me. Not the unshakable father of my childhood, but a man who'd been blind to half his family. Mom reached for my hand, her grip trembling. "I always knew Ethan was reckless," she said, her voice breaking. "But I thought he'd grow out of it. I thought if I didn't say anything, maybe things would fix themselves." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I was wrong. I see that now." I squeezed her hand, my anger softening. "You wanted to believe the best in him, Mom. I get that. But sometimes loving someone means admitting the truth about who they are." Her sobs deepened, and I held her close, wishing for just a moment that Grandma were here. She would have known what to say, how to hold us all together. Later that night, I found Ethan. Caleb's intel placed him at a seedy bar on the edge of town, the kind of place where debts were whispered about and favors were paid in cash. When I walked in, the smell of stale beer and desperation hit me like a wave. Ethan sat slumped at the far end of the bar, staring into a glass of whiskey like it held the answers to his ruined life. He didn't notice me until I slid onto the stool beside him. "Well," he muttered bitterly, not looking up, "here to gloat?" "No," I said softly, "I'm here because you're still my brother." That made him glance at me, his eyes bloodshot and hollow. "Brother," he scoffed, "feels more like you're my executioner." "I didn't destroy you, Ethan. You did that yourself." I leaned in, my voice low but firm. "But I'm giving you one last chance. Get help. Go to rehab. Pay what you can. Face what you've done. If you do that, maybe you can start over." His laugh was jagged, broken. "Start over? You think those loan sharks care about starting over?" "Then let me help you find people who do care," I urged. "Ethan, you don't have to keep running." His expression hardened, the self-pity giving way to anger. "You really are cold, Stella. You have all this power, all this money, and you won't even throw me a lifeline?" My heart ached, but I forced myself to hold steady. "I'm not cold," I said, rising to my feet. "I'm done being invisible." He stared at me, stunned into silence. "This is your mess," I continued. "I'll help you find a way out, but I won't carry you. Not anymore." For a moment, I thought I saw the brother I'd once loved flicker in his eyes, desperate and scared. But then he looked away, back to his drink. I left him there, my footsteps echoing on the worn wooden floor, knowing the choice was now his alone. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I felt lighter, freer. For the first time in years, I wasn't hiding. And whether Ethan rose or fell, I knew one thing for certain: I would never disappear into the shadows again. The house was quiet when I unlocked the door and stepped inside. It smelled the same as it always had, a faint mix of lavender from Grandma's sachets and the earthy scent of old wood. The evening light streamed through the lace curtains, painting the worn hardwood floors in warm gold. I walked slowly through each room, my hand brushing the familiar grooves in the banister, the framed family photos along the hallway. This place had witnessed everything: the laughter, the arguments, the moments of love and resentment we never said aloud. When I reached the kitchen, I paused by the window where Grandma and I used to sit with steaming mugs of tea. I could almost hear her voice, calm and certain. "Stella, you don't need them to believe in you. You just need to believe in yourself." A lump formed in my throat. For so many years, I'd been fighting to earn my family's approval, chasing scraps of recognition Ethan got without trying. But standing there now, surrounded by memories, I finally understood. I hadn't saved this house for them. I'd saved it for me. The next morning, Caleb and Maya met me at the property to go over final paperwork. "You're officially the sole owner," Maya said, handing me the signed documents. "It's yours, Stella. No more loopholes, no more surprises." I nodded, the weight of the past few weeks settling over me. It didn't feel like victory, not exactly. It felt like release. "What are you going to do with it?" Caleb asked, looking around at the aging walls and overgrown yard. I smiled, running my fingers along the edge of the papers. "Not sell it, not yet. This house isn't just where I grow up. It's proof that I can build something lasting, on my own terms. Maybe I'll restore it, maybe I'll turn it into something new. But whatever I do, it'll be my decision." Maya grinned. "That sounds like the Stella I know." Later, as I stood on the front porch, I looked back one last time. I thought about Dad, trying to reconcile the daughter he'd underestimated with the woman who had just outmaneuvered them all. I thought about Mom, fragile and regretful, finally seeing the truth. And I thought about Ethan, wherever he was, fighting demons I couldn't fight for him. This house had survived all of us, and now so had I. The sun dipped low on the horizon, and a fierce, quiet pride filled me. I didn't need their approval. I never had. I just needed to stop hiding and step fully into my own power. As I turned the key and locked the door, I whispered the words that had carried me here. They never saw me coming, but now they'll never forget me.